what we propose is to bring options to Cardano. We actually already have the smart contract for options. So in principle, everything is already working and doable. So you can already create options, and they are then just represented by Cardano native tokens, like any other Cardano native token, like an NFT or anything else.
Oh, what is going on, ADA Nation? Welcome to DApp Central. As a part of today's video, I'm excited to bring on a special guest representing the Genius Yield team. That is going to be Dr. Lars Brunjes, the CTO of Genius Yield and the Educational Director at IOG. Welcome aboard, Dr. Lars. How are you doing on this wonderful morning?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great, although for me, being in Germany, it's already afternoon,
Oh, wow.
but
Yeah,
I'm good.
you guys are well ahead of the schedule here. I just had my morning brew, but I'm excited to have you on here chatting about Genius Yield and 3 proposals that you guys are bringing for the Cardano community. So let's just go ahead and just jump right on in. I do cover Genius Yield here on the channel, but do you mind giving us a brief overview of what Genius Yield is and its goals for the Cardano ecosystem?
Of course, I wouldn't mind. So Genius Yield, the final goal is to build a DEX with a smart yield optimizer. But at the moment, we are still building the DEX, which will hopefully come out soon. And the goals for the DEX were, first of all, like extremely decentralized, like totally decentralized. And secondly, user-friendly. So the idea is that also newcomers to Cardano can easily use it. But also like this philosophical thing that we would like it to be completely decentralized. So no order batchers that are centrally run, nothing like that.
Thank you for the brief and quick introduction as to what Genius Yield is bringing. Now, I know you guys, I believe, are on the cusp of also releasing on the testnet very soon. Any updates surrounding that before we jump into the proposals?
Not really updates, just it's at the moment we are still on track. So I think there hopefully won't be any further delays. So yeah, very soon, as you say, testnet, and then shortly after mainnet.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, I think with development, one thing I've learned is things tend to take a little bit longer than expected, but it's always best to err on the side of caution and on the side of doing things right the first time because you only have one chance to make that first impression. So again, thank you for the brief introduction and quick updates surrounding the Genius Yield DEX and how development is going on. So as I mentioned, the focus for today's video will be the actual proposals that the Genius Yield team has put forward as a part of Project Catalyst funding round number 10. For any first-time viewers, Project Catalyst is a way for projects on Cardano to get funded through the Cardano treasury. Now, as we sit, I believe, have a total of 8 days remaining before the actual funding round voting closes. So to that end, Dr. Lars, you guys have recently released a set of 3 proposals. The first is, I believe, touching on options. The second is touching on the DEX aggregator or a DEX aggregator. And then the third is touching on some developer tools relating to Atlas. Do you mind maybe just kicking this off with what the options protocol or what the options proposal is aiming to bring to the Cardano network?
Of course. Maybe I should briefly start by explaining what options are, because I think that's maybe not everybody knows that. So options are very important in traditional finance, and sometimes they have a bit of a bad reputation because, you can lose a lot of money very quickly if you use options. So it has this vibe of gambling or extreme risk trading, but actually it has like very solid and reasonable um, justifications. For example, if you have some sort of business and you rely or you need to buy certain things in order to operate your business, like or sell. So, for example, you are a farmer and you plant wheat. So your livelihood depends on selling that wheat after each harvest. And of course, like wheat prices go up and down all the time, so it's very difficult to basically reliably predict your income over like several years. And that's one of the applications for options, because options allow you to buy or sell something in exchange for something else at a specific price at some point in the future. So in this example of the farmer, he could, for example, buy an option for his wheat that allows him to, in let's say a year's time, sell so and so many tons of wheat for at least so and so many dollars. And then, because nobody knows what the future will bring, I mean, maybe he would get more for his wheat on the free market, in which case his options become useless. But it could also be that I mean, the wheat price drops, and then his options are actually very useful because they still guarantee him this minimal price. So that's what options in the real world are. And of course, for this to work, there must be a guarantee. If this farmer buys the options, there must be a guarantee somehow that in a year's time he can actually execute them, exercise them, make use of them. And in the real world, of course, that works with like the court system. I mean, there are like brokers and clearing houses that try to ensure that these options are actually good and you can exercise them. Of course, on the blockchain, we don't have anything like that. Everything must be automatic and just governed by smart contracts. So what we propose is to bring options to Cardano, and basically the creator of an option will have to like put down a deposit when he creates the option, which will then guarantee that whoever buys the option and wants to exercise it in the future, that the funds are there to actually do this. And we actually already have the smart contract for options. So in principle, everything is already working and doable. So you can already create options, and they are then just represented by Cardano native tokens, like any other Cardano native token, like an NFT or anything else, which means you can automatically already trade them. I mean, if you have any DEX or any exchange, because they are just native tokens, you can trade them. And then when the time comes to exercise them, you can or cannot exercise them. And actually, we are more flexible than traditional options. So there are like various flavors of options, push and call, and American and European. And our contract in principle encompasses all of that. So it's more general than traditional options. And this proposal now, I mean, you may ask, why do we need money from Catalyst if everything is already done? It's basically to make it usable and more convenient. Because in order to trade, I mean, if people want to buy or sell options, they need like the information. There must be some sort of dashboard that tells you which options for a certain token pair are available, what conditions there are, the strike, so-called strike price, the period when they can be exercised, and all of that. So that is still missing. So I mean, all the pieces in principle are available, but we want to make it easy and secure and convenient to actually use this on Cardano. So that's what that first proposal is about.
Thank you for the quick breakdown of number one, what options are, and then number two, where you guys are with the actual development process and application of this on the Genie Shield platform. With the example that you gave, I have never really thought about applying options to everyday commodities and goods, but that was really interesting to hear with the wheat farmer. And so what you guys are basically doing is allowing that to take place on Cardano through the use of smart contracts and blockchain
Exactly.
technology. Now, some of the personal benefits that I see, right, are additional tools for traders from the Web2 or from the traditional space to then come
Mhm.
in and actually begin to leverage on Cardano. And what's also interesting is that there now seems to be a race for options, right? It seems like there's been more buzz and more talk about it, which tells me that the ecosystem is maturing. For the
Mhm.
longest, we were just satisfied with an order book style DEX, and then it was the AMM style DEX, and it now kind of seems to be shifting towards some of these advanced trading strategies, which options trading is a beginning of that, And
Mhm.
so I guess to you, what are some additional benefits that you see coming in from the availability, excuse me, of options trading on Cardano?
I mean, first of all, it's as you say that I think in particular, like institutional investors or like professional traders in traditional finance, they are just used to options. I mean, that's one of the most important financial instruments, I think. So, I mean, it makes it easier for people like that to actually make the step onto blockchain and to DEXs. And I think my example with the wheat farmer, obviously we don't have wheat directly on Cardano, but I think that also still applies. I mean, you can think that there may be projects that need, for example, a certain token to operate their business. I don't know. I mean, maybe they need to like have access to exchanges, so they need whatever. I mean, our Gens token or milk or something, and 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 must make sure that they can get that like at a reasonable price also in future. So they're an option would be useful. Or also, of course, if we, I mean, once we get a proper stable coin on Cardano, then obviously, if you hold a lot of tokens of one project like gens, for example, then you could get an option gens, that stable coin, to make sure that the volatility is somewhat dampened. I mean, for example, at Genius Yield, a lot of our income is in gens, of course, and so it's difficult to plan because the gens price and the ADA price, they are permanently fluctuating. So if there were options available already, then we, for example, could insure ourselves against this volatility by making sure that in future we have like a minimal price and a maximal price of gens that we can rely on. So I think, these real world examples are also applied to a certain extent to the blockchain, plus what I said before, that it's what traditional traders are used to and what they expect of a mature financial ecosystem.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I do have one question surrounding the actual tokenization of the options contracts themselves.
Mhm.
So let's say that, I were to utilize the Genius Yield platform to create an options contract. Once that's tokenized, I assume that I'll be able to actually hold that within my wallet. Could I then at any point, swap that or potentially move that to another wallet per se and allow for them to then, execute or exercise that option once the timeline or the deadline associated with the contract comes along?
Yes, indeed. I mentioned before that options are represented as Cardano native tokens, so they share all the properties of other Cardano native tokens. In particular, there's no way, even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to restrict trade or use of it in any way. So indeed, once the option exists and is in your wallet, you can do with it as you please. You can, for example, sell it to somebody else, or give it to somebody else, and that other party can then exercise them or execute them. So they are freely tradable. Obviously, we hope that if somebody uses our platform to create them that and wants to trade them, they will use our DEX to trade them, but nobody has to. It's a native token and you can do whatever you want. And I think that's also a good thing, because it means that, it basically, so the DEXs are not like separated, but it's like interconnectivity between DEXs as well, which is a good thing. I think at least it's good for the users.
Yeah, I think operating in a permissionless and decentralized environment, we need the ability to do, those kinds of things, move our tokens freely, and like you said, potentially use different dexes to
Uh-huh.
interact with the smart contracts or with the options contracts. Now, to that end, we were talking about maturing markets, right? Another thing that I've noticed has been the rise of DEX aggregators.
Uh-huh.
So that's going to take us into the second proposal. But do you
Right.
mind touching on the benefits of a DEX aggregator, how they work, and what they bring to Cardano?
Right. So in principle, it means that you are not restricted to one DEX, but basically you can use more than, different DEXs. So it aggregates DEXs. Um, that's what an aggregator is. And of course, the advantage is, that if a separate single DEX has just limited liquidity. If you have access to more DEXs, then obviously there's like more liquidity in total. So you basically, chances are higher that your order will get matched or that you get a better price, because there's just a bigger pool. That's how markets work. The bigger, the better, basically. So it's definitely good for the users if they don't have to decide on one DEX, but no matter basically which one they pick, as long as that one uses aggregators, they still have access to all the liquidity. So the liquidity is not just compartmentalized into many different DEXs. And yeah, sorry. To
No, no, I was just going to just rehash what you said. So if I understand it correctly, it'll help decrease the price impact for a particular swap while also giving the swap initiator the best offer on the market.
That's right, exactly. And in our specific case, it's not just any old aggregator. It's for our order, for our smart liquidity routers, or smart order routers, sorry. And that's one thing I'm quite proud of at Genius Yield. And also, I think we are unique, at least right now, with this. Um, others have their badgers and whatever they are called. We call them smart order routers. So these bots that match orders, and they are completely open. So I mean, we of course will run our own, but anybody can. So any person in the world can run their own smart order routers and match orders on Genius, because our API is basically open. So I mean, our smart contracts, and there's no restriction. So we don't have anything that only like special whitelisted parties can match orders, or that you need to buy a license or anything like that. So anybody can. And I think that's very cool. I mean, because first of all, it basically offers the opportunity of some income for technically inclined people that enjoy doing something like that, like writing strategies for such an smart order router. And secondly, I think it's really good for the users, because I mean, no matter how much effort we put into writing our own smart order router, it's obvious that there will be some edge cases or some types of orders that we maybe will overlook or not treat with priority. So if it was just us, then like there would be an inefficiency in the market. But by opening it to the whole world, as soon as there is something like that people realize, okay, certain types of orders are ignored by us, then they can write a smart order router that specializes on those cases. And I mean, their interest is that they make money by that. And of course, it's good for the users because their orders get matched faster. So it's basically game theory at work. I mean, the smart order router authors compete for matching orders, and they benefit because for every match they basically can pocket the arbitrage. But the users also win because I mean there are lots of smart order routers queuing to match their orders, so they themselves will get them orders matched faster. So I mean that's the general situation independent of this Catalyst proposal. And now the Catalyst proposal is to basically allow Genius smart order routers to also match with orders from other DEXs. So same benefits as in general with aggregators. So if there are more matching opportunities, then uh, matches happen faster, and prices are better in general, and the whole market will be more efficient. Uh, yes. So that's the idea, to take this concept, the smart order concept, and not to restrict it to Genius yield orders, but um, make it open for as many DEXs as possible.
Right. So allowing the smart order routers to interact with the broader ecosystem, the other
Yes.
DEXs that also provide
Uh-huh.
liquidity. And so I think that's really huge. And what I like about the smart order routers is what you just mentioned there, that they will be customizable because the community will be running them, right? And
Uh-huh.
so what I see in a particular case like this is because anybody can run an SOR, that's going to create somewhat of a sense of competition between them to then provide the
Exactly.
best service. So from an end
Exactly.
user's perspective, you know, because there's so many SORs out there, they're going to be competing amongst themselves and trying to do the best service to where they're able to also get a piece of the pie or a piece
Uh-huh.
of the revenue, right? While also providing a good service. So all in all, I think it's a win-win situation. I'm really excited about just DEX aggregators in general. Again, there's been so much talk about DEX aggregators, and it's funny to just look back a couple of months ago when people were just satisfied with just an aggregator pulling from the best single source. It wasn't doing partial fills or anything like that, but that in
Uh-huh.
itself was an upgrade from just purchasing from one single DEX. So it's really
Correct.
cool to see the ecosystem evolving and maturing as time goes on. And it's always funny because I'm sure that you've heard this before, but people like to call Cardano a ghost chain. And
Uh,
I'm just like, man, when
yes.
you sit around and you look at the innovation, it really blows my mind. So, any last comments or closing thoughts you want to add surrounding the DEX aggregator?
Not really. I think, I mean, what you said is exactly how I see it, that there will be competition amongst the smart order router creators, and that will be good for the community, for the users, because I mean, lots of people are competing to fill their orders or match their orders as quickly as possible. So it's really a win-win, I think. I mean, it's fun for people to write these things and come up with strategies to match somehow orders that other order routers don't match or miss. And by doing that and competing, I mean, the users win because their orders get matched quickly. So yes, you said. So yes, I'm
Agreed.
very excited to that
No, I
for
am
that.
excited as well. I am excited as well. Again, Dr. Lars, I want to thank you for your time. Now, last but not least, we've jumped into two proposals touching on benefits again for end users, but we haven't really touched on developers. So, the third proposal we're going to be jumping into is going to be surrounding Atlas 2.0 or the Plutus application backend and some improvements to that. Do you mind explaining what Atlas is and then what we can get as a part of V2.0?
Of course, I wouldn't mind. I'm happy to. So, I mean, code for blockchain applications can roughly be split into two parts. There's the on-chain code and the off-chain code. So the on-chain code is the smart contracts, so which lives on the blockchain. I mean, not really, of course, but I mean, one can think of it like that. But that's not in, and I mean, that's maybe the most critical and most difficult part. But you also need the so-called off-chain code to interact with the blockchain. So we need to query the blockchain to see what situation is there. I mean, in the context of a DEX, for example, you want to know what orders are open, for example, and you need to be able to submit transactions. So, I mean, typically, I mean, like in a DEX, I mean, first you have to query the blockchain to see what orders are open. And then maybe somebody wants to place an order. So then you have to construct a transaction and submit it to the blockchain. So there's this querying and submitting of, I mean, querying, transaction construction, and submission to the blockchain. So that's also very important. Otherwise, the smart contracts alone, I mean, they need this support by infrastructure like this. And IOG, of course, was aware of that and tried to develop this so-called PAB, Pluto's application backend, was what was supposed to do exactly that. But for whatever reason, I mean, that was a big failure and never really worked, and nobody's using it, and it was like just a big mess. So when Genius Yield started prototyping 1.5 years ago or so, there was nothing. I mean, we need, obviously you have to do these things. You need to clear the blockchain, you need to construct transactions, but there was no, I mean, there was just nothing. So we started developing our own framework to do this in Haskell because, I mean, we do most of our stuff in Haskell. Right. And over time, I mean, it was useful and it worked. And at some point then last year, we saw that that's actually generally useful. So not just for us, it might also help other developers to do these things, because obviously every project was faced with the same issue. So we decided to open source it, which we have done like beginning of this year or so. So everybody that wants to like write Haskell code and wants to interact with the blockchain can use our so-called Atlas framework. I mean, there are alternatives by now. I mean, if projects start now, they are not in this situation that we were in 1.5 years ago, that there was nothing. So now there are actually a lot of alternatives. For example, I like Lucid very much, which is a type you can do in TypeScript to do these off-chain interactions. But nevertheless, I mean, I mean, Haskell, I mean, I love Haskell, and there are very good reasons to use Haskell because most of the IoG software is written in Haskell. So Haskell somehow has like a special status. So if you want to stick with Haskell, then I think Atlas is probably the best framework at the moment out there to do these things. But of course, because of its history, I mean, as I explained, I mean, we wrote that out of necessity to get our own DEX off the ground, which means that, I mean, we didn't develop it with like developing a general framework for everyone in mind, but we wanted to get our own DEX working. I mean, we don't mind if others use it. We even are happy if are proud if others use it. But the point is just the features we added were those that we ourselves needed. And this is now where this last catalyst proposal comes in. We want to make it more feature complete. So also, I mean, that basically anything that can possibly be done on Cardano can be done with Atlas. There are some examples. For example, we don't use metadata at the moment, and we don't use native scripts. So Atlas at the moment has support for neither. So those would be two examples of what we would like to add if we win this catalyst proposal. So just make it more usable, I mean, more general purpose, basically, so that no matter what you want to do, you don't have to, I mean, you can just use Atlas and you don't need anything else. So that's the idea, to make it rounder and more feature complete, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think one of the key things about what you guys have done with Atlas is open sourced it, right, for anybody
Uh-huh.
else to then come along and utilize it. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the one of the pretty big projects, which is going to be World Mobile, is actually incorporated the Plutus application backend that you guys have built as well, right? So really
Uh-huh.
showing the power of the community and the fact that we don't always have to build the wheel ourselves, right? A lot of times there's other projects that have done a lot of the heavy lifting that are then willing to allow others to benefit from that. And that's exactly what I see with the platform like Atlas. So I'm definitely behind that particular proposal. Again, making these tools widely available for anybody in the ecosystem to jump on board and use them without having to spend the time to develop them on their own.
Mhm.
So I think that is going to bring us to the end surrounding the three proposals. Are there any closing thoughts, Dr. Lars, that you want to share here with the community regarding Catalyst or even Genius Yield, generally speaking?
I no, I just want to I mean, in the beginning you said it's good to get things right, and even if it takes a bit longer. And I mean that has also always been the philosophy at IOG. I mean, we have been criticized heavily for being like delayed with Shelley and those things. But I firmly believe it was the right decision. I mean, for IOG to get to do things properly, research based and so on. And even if people were upset that we were later than we hoped we would be to like do it right. And I think the same is true for Genius Yield. I mean, of course, nobody's happy that we are much later than we originally hoped, but I think it's the same thing. I mean, we try to do it right, and we try to be fully decentralized and open source as much as possible. So yes, so I hope that people will be patient with us, and I'm sure it will be worth it in the end, the wait.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And just to kind of echo that same sentiment, it doesn't benefit anybody for projects on Cardano to rush with half-baked products. That will catch up to us, whether it's now, a year from now, 2 years from now, etc. So I think it makes sense to just take the time and do it right the first time. That way there are no issues once the actual platform goes live. So to that end, I am excited that, development continues with Genius Yield, Genius X, and just seeing so much development in Cardano in general. And so I'll definitely be keeping my community updated as to what you guys are continuing to provide for the ecosystem. So last but not least, for anybody who's interested in supporting all the Catalyst proposals that we've touched on as a part of today's video, check out the description down below. I'll leave the links to all of the official Genius links. If you guys want to go ahead and join their community, they are active on Discord as well as Telegram. Again, I'll leave the links to that down below. And as always, if you guys enjoyed today's chat with Dr. Lars, or if you found anything to be educational along the way, I would appreciate it if you guys could tap that like button. If it's your first time stopping by the channel, consider subscribing. And if you guys have any questions for Dr. Lars, make sure to go ahead and leave those down below in the comments section. On that note, we'll see you guys in the next video.